So let's talk about the commercial motor vehicles. Like I said, used in commerce, that means in business, and any of the following: gross vehicle weight rating, gross combination weight rating, gross weight, gross actual weight, 10,000 pounds or more. Another thing is designed to transport 8 or more passengers. So 8 passengers, including the driver. That means 8 butts in seats. And it's a lot of companies will try to kind of mess with this a little bit, and they'll remove a seat. It doesn't matter. It's what the manufacturer. So if the manufacturer designed that vehicle to have 8 seats, then even if you remove a seat, it doesn't matter. It used to be where you could remove a seat, and they really kind of just went off of what was actually in the vehicle. But they've cracked down on that a little bit. It's whatever the manufacturer designed it to be. So just make sure you include the driver. So if there's 8 seats, or in this case, 8 seat belts potentially, then you are now regulated as a commercial motor vehicle. And that is for compensation. If it's not for compensation, and scenarios like that would be your church buses, companies that have employee buses where they move employees back and forth. At that point, if it's not for compensation, if you're not getting compensation for any reason. Another thing I see a lot is companies that are, they have those tourist things, they have water rafting, things like that, and they have those buses that move the people back and forth once they're done rafting. So in that scenario, they technically are getting compensation. So they need to use that 8 passenger instead of that 15 passenger scenario, because they are getting compensation somehow. They're just rolling it into a package price. So be careful how you do that. It has to be truly not for compensation. So at that point, if it's not for compensation, it's 15 passengers, including the driver. And that's what would be considered for the general definition, commercial motor vehicles. Now, for the definition on CDLs, when is a CDL required? The CDL is required at 26,001 pounds or more. So that's either interstate or intrastate, it doesn't matter. Once it hits 26,000 pounds, that's whenever a CDL is required. Now, like I said earlier, check with your state, because there are a few states. I'm gonna have a slide that shows a couple of the states and what their actual rule is. But check with your state just to ensure that your driver doesn't need maybe a Class E, Class F, Class D license. But here's the different classes. We have Class A, we have Class B, we have a Class C CDL. So the Class A CDL, and a lot of you have probably seen the Class A CDLs. The Class A CDLs is gross combination weight rating of 26,000 pounds or more, 26,001 pounds or more, provided the vehicle being towed is in excess of 10,000 pounds, greater than 10,000 pounds. So what that looks like is, it looks like a tractor trailer. So it's something you actually combine together. So it would be a tractor and a trailer, or it could possibly be a dump truck hauling a backhoe on a trailer. That backhoe on a trailer is probably over 10,000 pounds. So at that point, they would need a Class A CDL. It could also be a pickup truck pulling a gooseneck, even if it's empty, because the gross vehicle weight rating says it's over the weight. So if it goes over 26,000 pounds, they need a Class A CDL. So like I said, that could be a tractor trailer. It could be a pickup, dually pickup pulling this. 3 axles. Pretty sure, I can almost guarantee you that this load right here is over 26,000 pounds. Now this is hauling farm equipment, so it's a little bit different, but this is going to be over 26,000 pounds. So this pickup truck driver would require a Class A CDL for this, if they're in commerce. A Class B CDL is gross vehicle weight rating or gross combination weight rating of 26,000 pounds or more, if the vehicle being towed is less than 10,000 pounds. So Class A is the trailer is over 10,000 pounds. Class B is the trailer is under 10,000 pounds. Or it could just be a single vehicle by itself over 26,000 pounds. So if we look at that and we look at the examples of that, school bus, any kind of bus like that is going to potentially require a Class B CDL if they're not pulling a trailer, or if the trailer that they are pulling is under 10,000 pounds. It could be, a dump truck. Could be a cement truck, things like that. Typically, when we see Class B CDLs, it's like beverage distributors. They have Class Bs typically if they're not a combination vehicle. Sometimes we see the combination vehicles, but If they're Class B, if it's over 26,000 pounds, either by itself or in combination with a trailer under 10,000 pounds. That's whenever you have a Class B. A Class C CDL does not meet the definition of Group A or B. It's not one or the other. It's typically a smaller vehicle, so it transports 16 or more passengers, including the driver, or it's placarded for hazardous materials. So if it's placarded for hazardous materials, it doesn't matter what the weight is. When it comes to passengers, if it's over 16 or more passengers, including the driver, then they need to have a Class C CDL. So a Class C might be required in your scenario. Examples include a small shuttle bus that, you know, has 16 seats. Could be a car. I mean, if you can fit 1,000 pounds of hazardous material in there, or whatever it may be, depending on what kind of hazmat you're hauling, then you would need a CDL to drive that car, or the mystery machine if you haul fireworks in there and it's 1,000 pounds of fireworks. So here's some CDL endorsements. The P is for passenger vehicles. It's going to be like Greyhound bus. They have to have passengers. School buses is actually an S. T is for doubles and triples. So you can drive doubles and triples trailers if you have a T endorsement. N is for tank vehicles. So that's for tanks. Hazardous materials is an H. And an X is a combined H and an N. So it's a hazardous material in a tanker vehicle. So you might be able to haul a tanker that's hauling milk or something that's non-hazardous. And that you would just need the N endorsement for the tank endorsement. But if you're hauling a hazardous material in that tank, say diesel fuel or some other kind of hazardous materials in that tank, you need a combined X. You need both the tanker and the hazardous material endorsement. So you're going to be looking, whenever you're looking for driver's endorsements, you're going to be looking at that X. And then air brakes technically isn't an endorsement, but there are restrictions for air brakes. So if you ever see any restrictions on a license that say restricted air brakes, that means they can't drive anything with air brakes. They can't drive a bus that has air brakes. They can't drive a tractor trailer if it's air brakes. Most of the time, whenever you see that happen, Class A CDL with an air brake restriction, that typically means that they've been driving hot shots or pickups, trailers without air brakes. So just make sure that you don't just assume because they have a Class A CDL that they can drive now a tractor trailer with air brakes. If they have that air brake restriction, make sure that you're verifying, or they just can't drive the vehicle if it has air brakes. So let's talk about the exemptions. So there are some CDL exemptions for different vehicles. So like military vehicles, you don't have to have a CDL for that. Farm vehicles, if you're a true farming operation, if you are operating a true farming or agriculture vehicle, then you don't have to have a CDL. I see too many times that companies will think that they're part of farming. So just verify that you are truly actual farming. There's certain mileage that you have to abide by in order to fall under that. So recreational vehicles, and I have the little star right here by recreational vehicles because just because it's a recreational vehicle does not necessarily mean you do not have to have a CDL. If you're using that RV for business purposes, then technically you're doing it for in commerce. I mean, it's in commerce because you're using it for business purposes. So be careful of that. In most cases, officers aren't going to bother you roadside because all they see is an RV. But there are cases where, you know, if you're using your RV for business purposes, I see it a lot with construction companies. They're using that RV because their supervisors, they might use it as an office. Their supervisors stay in the RV while on location, things like that. Technically, that's in commerce. It's for business purposes. So make sure that you verify with your state whether you have to have that CDL for that RV. But for interstate purposes, it's in commerce. I mean, that particular load is not in commerce, but it's in the furtherance of commerce. So just be careful whenever you think of that. For the most part, RVs, you know, they don't have to have CDLs. So you can have your 80-year-old grandpa riding around in a 40-foot RV traveling across the country, and he doesn't have to have any special training, any CDLs, anything like that. But now you do it for business, and all of a sudden you have to have a CDL. Sometimes it seems a little unfair, but you know, it is what it is. So another thing is emergency vehicles. They don't have to have CDLs, but I actually see firefighters have CDLs quite a bit to operate these, even though they don't have to have them. But there are some restrictions that are placed on their license to say they can only operate government vehicles, things like that. So sometimes you might see that. I do also see a lot of non-commercial, non-CDL Class A licenses. Typically, whenever I see that non-CDL license, but it is a Class A, it is a lot of times for farming or for, firefighters have that, government employees get that, things like that. So be careful to make sure that your license that you're looking at says commercial driver's license or CDL. So different classes, I talked about the different classes. So they're Class D, Class E, and Class F licenses. So Missouri has what's called a Class E. Missouri, any kind of business you do, you have to have that Class E. It's like a chauffeur's license. So back in the day, whenever I first got my CDL was in the 90s. So back then, actually a little bit before that, I think in 1987 maybe is whenever the feds took over. Back then they were called chauffeur's licenses. So some states like Missouri, New York, New Jersey, South Carolina, Georgia, Louisiana, they've actually kind of reinstated that whole chauffeur's license for that purpose. So whenever you're operating in the state for business purposes, you have to have that type of license if the driver's licensed in that state. So even if you operate in Iowa, but the driver lives in Missouri, the driver still has to have that class of license, even though he might be operating in Iowa. So keep that in mind. So check your state, verify with your state if there's any kind of special licensing that they require for business purposes. But as far as I know, these are the only states doing it right now, but things change, things happen, states do, they change the laws. So I don't want to say